Every decision that we make either heals the body or it hurts the body. I
Yep.
really don't think that there's a lot of neutrality in that. I really think that it's what am I doing today that's tipping the scale towards healing, and what am I doing today that's tipping the scale toward hurting? And know that it's okay that there are some things that are going to tip on the hurting side because you have more on the healing side.
Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. So today is part 3 of a 3-part interview I do with my friend and colleague, Kelsey Weaver. In this particular episode, we're going to be talking about some of the more esoteric aspects of our work, particularly very interesting things like the mind-body connection from an energy, emotional, mental perspective, some of the patterns we've seen in the complex cases that we've both worked with, what we've learned individually on our own health paths and journeys, and just the trends we see in the functional medicine space that can often be pitfalls for people to fall into. I really hope you enjoy this episode. I don't know, I feel like kind of the whole space we're speaking on right now is just this bigger challenge that a lot of our clients face that I know I haven't found a silver bullet solution for. And that's they think they're starting a pretty black and white physical health optimization process when they start with us. And they are on a basic level. But what they maybe don't realize is that by definition, you start to step into that space and you take that journey, it's going to start to call into question every other facet of your life. And this is why we also do a lot of coaching and we look at these other tangential aspects to health that clients may not think are important, like the quality of their relationships, their job satisfaction, their family of origin, and all of those things, right? Because inevitably, if they're going to start to make nutritional dietary changes, they're going to improve their sleep habits, they're going to improve maybe even their hobbies because they're more conducive to living a balanced, healthier life. It's going to start to show them in a very big way, who are the people who align with them in their life and who are the people that don't. And that can be an emotionally painful process. And I think a lot of our clients know deep down on some level that they have people in their life that are not really supportive of their health, and they might even be one of the limiting reasons why people take so long to actually make the choice to start a health reclamation journey, because they fear, oh my God, I'm going to be the weird one now, or I'm going to be the one stepping out. And I know that my mom's going to be antagonistic, or my best friend won't support me, or whatever it is. But sooner or later, there becomes this sort of decisional point where I think they're like, if I keep going, I might have to honestly grapple with and come to terms with the fact that I have to develop a new circle of close friends that align more with my principles, or certain family members that are just never going to be supportive. I might have to keep a little bit more of a distant relationship with them. And that's deeper, harder work. And I think this is where that whole trauma, psychological, emotional, energetic landscape comes full circle. Everything kind of becomes everything. Those dynamics in a person's life from childhood onward play a role in them getting sick. And then when they make that decision to own that process and face those factors, they have to confront that, Kelsey. And then they have to make those choices can I do this if I still keep the exact same dynamics with the exact same people? And I would say, from what I understand of the way the universe works and energy and like attracting I think it's very, very minimal chance that people are going to keep those exact same relationships intact and succeed at their health goals, right? Have you seen that in your practice?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I think it becomes back to a little bit more of a people pleasing vibe
Yeah.
and I think this is a generational thing too,
Yep.
right? So it's people, your kids are seen and not heard, right? Like that's
Mhm.
obviously one of the oldest ones. And you say yes because you are a respectful person, and that's how we grew up, right? At least I did a little bit more, right?
Yep.
So I think it that starts to play a role in how we keep our relationships, even if that relationship is not serving us, or even if it's detrimental and eroding our own health. It becomes this inner dialogue of, well, if I break up with them as a friend, am I selfish because I want to put my health first?
Yep.
Am I an asshole because now I'm suddenly just telling them that I can't be with them anymore? We're not together. I can't hang out with you. There's just like this crazy dynamic that starts to happen when, in all reality, I do believe that society is starting to change the narrative. I really do. And it's
Mhm.
no longer selfish for us to put ourselves first. It is now called self love and
Right.
self respect and self care.
Right.
And I think that the more that we can embrace that while still being respectful and loving towards others that are respectful and loving towards us, the more
Right.
healing we can actually have. So, again, it's that crossover that we like flirted with at the beginning of this conversation of what's your health history? What's your history with your family? What's your history with yourself? What's your relationship with your family and yourself and your environment and your people and your humans? And how is that not only the what is that relationship like, but what is your perspective of that
Mhm.
relationship? And what is your perspective of change that you need to have in that relationship in order for you to feel better, or to at
Mhm.
least lighten the toxic load that can come from other humans?
Exactly. I agree 100%. And I think as you're saying all this, this also makes me realize that like one of the biggest reasons why most people need to hire a guide of some sort, whether it's you or me or some other really well qualified functional medicine practitioner, is because we don't know what we don't know until we have someone that's already pioneered that path, as well as understands these dynamics. Because part of I think this process just involves learning to trust yourself, and you're going to go through, suspending doubt, taking guidance on diet right in the beginning. Now you're going to start implementing a protocol maybe to heal the gut. There's all these steps that we ask our clients to go through, and many of these things they've never done before, or they haven't maybe done it in the same way and it's yielded results. And so there's this process of like trust they're placing in us, but there's also this like process of learning to trust themselves because they haven't had those answers. Like if they knew how to do this and their support system at large was able to get them there, they would have gotten there, right, Kelsey? And that's why they're showing up on our doorsteps. And so I think it does become this sort of process of like strengthening their own inner voice and their own inner sense of wisdom so that whether we call that like self-love or prioritizing, their needs first and foremost, which you kind of have to do. It's like the whole put your like air mask on before you serve the child next to you right on the airplane thing. Like I think it's also a boundary thing and recognizing that like, hey, like my family did the best they could for me with what they knew. And if I can see it through that lens of like, they wanted to help and they still want to help, but they're limited in their capacity to understand. And their thinking only goes this far. But now that I've acquired all this knowledge and I've put this to the test and I'm seeing what's possible, I have to just stay on this path and sort of, in a sense, like be able to kind of maintain that like dual understanding of like they're trying their best. They're still going to probably try to upset the apple cart with me and like get in the way at times, but then knowing when to put that boundary down, but then being able to say like, no, it's okay that you question what I'm doing. Like I though know what I need to do and I've walked this out and I've seen the improvements and I've had, a lot of learning and guidance from somebody who's done this too. And I know this is possible, right? Like that's a very hard thing to do because it does take a lot of willingness to kind of grow as a person and change and challenge your own beliefs and be okay with developing into a stronger individual who might like have their own beliefs that exist a little bit apart from their support system, and maybe part of that does require changing the intimacy of certain relationships, because it is too hard to have these people close at hand if they're really not supporting, right? But it's a difficult, like I feel like a lot of people maybe don't realize that they might be signing up for some of that emotional work alongside the physical work that they think they're going to do in the very beginning, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're speaking a lot on forgiveness
Yep.
and resolve, which it's easier, I think, for people. And I think I've seen this too, and I've done this before too, because I've gone through all kinds of therapeutic work and I freaking love it. And I think
Yeah.
everybody should.
Oh yeah.
But I think that there is, like what you spoke on earlier about energies, right?
Hmm.
If there's an energy where if we talk to a client and we say we do want to explore relationships and how do we create these healthy boundaries and so on, and for some people that healthy boundary might be anger or resentment that's putting that boundary there. And while they're still putting the boundary there and they're breaking up with that person and you are not good for my health, what that does for us may not still be the best choice because there's still that resentment or there's anger or there's guilt or shame or whatever that comes with that. So then
Hmm.
it doesn't even become that the boundary was the issue. It becomes the energy that we're putting on ourselves in putting
Hmm.
that boundary up. So now we're getting really convoluted in, hey, yes, we do need to have these healthy relationships. And as we find these healthy relationships that support our health, we still have to have great energy for ourselves and keeping ourselves really healthy in finding forgiveness, however that can be, finding resolve, whatever that can be, finding those emotions, being okay to sit in those emotions, to process those emotions, anger, resentment, whatever it is, that's totally okay. At some
Hmm.
point, we do have to let that go and not push it down so far that it just sits in our liver for decades and decades and decades. And then our liver doesn't do a damn thing for us, which we know will happen.
Yeah, that's great Chinese medicine yogic philosophy, right? Like the organ of anger and stuckness.
Yeah. I only know that because I don't know if I told you this story, but I did a liver cleanse, like a pretty intense liver cleanse one day. It was like a 4 or 5 day thing.
Oh, really?
And on the last day, you're supposed to it's like kind of a little bit more, not a liquid diet, but like fruits and veggies, more plant-based for a little while. Then
Yeah.
on the last night, you take herbs throughout to get the liver stimulated and love on the liver. The last day, you drink water with Epsom salt to loosen up the bile ducts.
Yep.
And then you literally drink like 8 ounces of olive oil
Oh,
to
yeah.
to stimulate. Courtney, I cannot tell you. I was laying on my bathroom floor, like not sure if I was going to vomit or have diarrhea or both at the same time because I felt so terrible at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, liver hour, right? And my liver was so mad at me, just trying to flush things through. And of course, I was sitting there like putting this like functionally in my head. And I'm like, this is my resentment. This is my resentment from my childhood creeping
Yeah.
up on me right now. And my liver is saying, you held on too long. So so for those people that would love to do a liver cleanse, maybe think about your childhood and any resentment and anger you may be holding, because that was rough.
Oh, for sure. Did you actually like find you were like passing like weird like stones and stuff or anything to that regard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those gallstones and things,
Did they
those
get
came
flushed?
out the next day. And
Okay.
they flushed the whole like the next day. And it was one of the most intense experiences of my life outside of having kids.
Yeah.
But of course, I decided that was amazing. Let's do it again. And I did it again 3 months later, and it was much less intense, but it was still very much there. And I truly equate that to some people don't have that type of experience.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I truly equate that to my upbringing and
Yeah.
how my functional timeline laid out and how much was stored in my body saying, "Ooh, you've been mad for a lot of your life, Kelsey. Let's
Yeah.
let's get rid of this."
Oh, for sure. No, it's so interesting you bring that up because with some of the functional medicine mentorship I've been doing with Ray Bizovic, who's a naturopath in Chicago area, like he actually one of his workshops was on liver, right? And of course that same type of thing. I mean, it's like a pretty well-known protocol to cleanse the liver where you're using olive oil. I think lemon juice is a way to do it too. And it can be really intense. And I've always thought like I want to do this, but I don't know because my foundational issue I struggle with is IBS-D and colitis. And so I've already got enough propensity to have that kind of stuff going on. But
Yeah.
part of me is kind of like, well, what would actually come out though if I did that? Like that could be really amazing. Like the other thing I think is really amazing are coffee enemas, but I've been scared to go there too for the exact same reason. But like I do agree. I mean, I think that's one of those like interesting examples where through a physical intervention, we can actually have a very real impact on like stuck energy. I mean, you can certainly do it the other way too, where through different therapies, somatic practices, you get enough momentum going, you can have immediate or even like, after days, months, years, and gosh, like the work of Joe Dispenza really shows us a lot with his meditation technique. Like people can have instantaneous like healing transformations. And I just think that's like so amazing. It's like how our body can literally from the brain down, change instantaneously under the right conditions. But it's that idea of like, you know, I think with those really extreme cleanses, if you want to call it that, where you're working with moving a lot of bile quickly, like part of it is I think you have to be prepared, both psychologically, but then physically too. And I'm guessing when you did that, you were probably already pretty well down a path of having the foundations down and good diet and all of that too, right, Kelsey?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was about 18 months ago I did this, and I did learn a lot
Yeah.
doing it the first time versus the second time, and how I could have done things differently the first time, which is interesting. But I do think that again, it's that energy that I had stored up. I really truly believe. And again, do I understand Chinese medicine in ways that many people do? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I
Right.
don't claim to be an expert on that, and that's okay. But what
Yeah.
I do know is that it definitely impacted me. And I know that I believe that that was a huge, huge obstacle for me going through that. So, yes, if you want to do a liver cleanse, great. You could probably work a little bit more gently than I did.
Oh, for
So,
sure. And I think you and I both optimally, like if somebody's listening to this, they're like, oh, I'm going to look into that and do that at home myself. Like I definitely would not recommend that if you don't have basic foundations down. Like, and I do think it's kind of like losing weight, 20 pounds in 2 weeks, like terrible idea. Right. And this is again where, yeah, you can spend a lot of time trying to Google this stuff and learn this stuff, but I just find time and time again, clients don't know what they don't know. And if they don't have those foundations dialed in, trying to do something like that is probably going to make them feel even more awful than you felt because of the fact that like they just aren't prepared, like physiologically speaking, either, right?
right. And I think that's where the danger of what are you purging from your liver, and have you opened detox pathways in all other arenas of the body? And if the
Exactly.
answer is no, it can be extremely dangerous, and you
Yes.
can feel a lot worse than me. So it is unfortunate that you can just Google liver cleanse and have this, have so many things pop up and you just buy one and you go with it, when there's so much work that has to be done if you want to do this responsibly. And I think
Mhm.
unfortunately a lot of people do things like this, and kind of these, I wouldn't say necessarily trendy, but even trendy diets,
Yep.
like a ketogenic diet or, intermittent fasting or whatever the case may be. But we're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're doing it
Exactly.
for the weight loss when we should be really doing it for, whatever is going on in our health. There's a time and a place for a ketogenic diet. There is
Exactly.
also a time and a place for an intermittent fasting strategy. But is
Exactly.
that time and place for someone who just wants to lose weight? Absolutely not. There's so much other work that can be done that is just the foundational work first. So, yeah, don't Google trendy diets and just go buy something off the internet because we talked about it. That sounds terrible. But yes, there's a lot to consider.
Oh, for sure. And I agree. And kind of on that same note, like just going back to the story you told about the client who started the 5K and then her stress hormones went off and she stopped losing weight. Like those are two other perfect examples of how stress hormones can start to get really jacked up because people aren't controlling their blood sugar appropriately, or they don't have enough carbohydrate coming in to support thyroid, to support glucose. Like, yeah, I mean, there is a time and place, like you said, but people will hop on those bandwagons and then be like, this is amazing. I lost weight and I feel so much better. And I don't know. I think it's really, really hard, Kelsey. Like, I think the placebo effect is always at play in some of these cases. And, just making a change like that can sometimes convince a person that they really do feel better. And maybe they do for a period of time in the beginning, but it can be really hard, I think, for people to truly understand, like, is this a long-term viable solution? But I mean, nowhere in human history have people done, as far as I understand, at least, like, for prolonged health, like extended fasts, or, tried to maintain healthy sugar handling on like limited, meals or calories, certain windows of the day. Like, I just think that can be really hard. And then all the more so when we live in a world that's very high demand, that, people are just having trouble regulating their cortisol output because of lifestyle stressors and job expectations and all of the things they're trying to balance. Like, you can't perform like that and then restrict your calories to like small meals or whatnot. Like, that's just a terrible, you're going to have stress levels totally out of whack. I don't know. I just think that that's, again, another really fad thing people glom onto that can be a very slippery slope, right?
Oh yeah, it is very scary. And I think, I can be a smart ass with people for sure. I don't know if you can get that from me, but when people, I remember this conversation that I had a few years ago with someone, and it was through like a coffee shop window, of course, but she's like, "Oh my God, I'm like losing my dad is, what do you think of intermittent fasting?" She asked. And of course, I gave her my thoughts on intermittent fasting, and this can be problematic for listeners, and that's okay. I don't love intermittent fasting for many reasons, unless it's done specifically and strategically. I will
Yeah.
have some people do it every once in a while, but she said my dad's doing it and he's losing so much weight and it's so great, and I just believe in it, is what she was saying. I'm like, well, did your dad lose weight because he stopped eating at night before bed?
Right.
Or was it intermittent fasting itself? Because
Exactly.
statistically, the last time I checked, I believe the statistic for post dinner and bedtime was the average American takes in about 500 to 800 calories after dinner before they go to
I've
bed.
heard that. I've absolutely heard that too, Kelsey. Yeah. It's
So
crazy.
if it's like, if intermittent fasting, if yours like, I'm done eating at 6 or 7 at night and that's your dinner time,
Yeah.
is intermittent fasting work, or is the boundary that it created for you to stop
Mm.
eating those 500 to 600 calories a day, is that what worked? Because if you consume 500 calories less and your weight stable, for example, you're not losing weight, you're not gaining weight, and your weight stable, but you have a 500 calorie deficit every single day, you're suddenly losing weight. You're using a pound a week.
Yeah.
Is it the intermittent fasting, or is it the fact that we're not having 500 calories of ice cream at night?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I'm not a fan of it either. And just a quick story from my world on that. I had a client, she's postmenopausal, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I took a Dutch test with another practitioner and she uses IF alongside, I don't know if she was using bioidentical hormone support, but she's like, I've never felt better." And she's like, "I haven't eaten in 2 days." And I was just like
Oh God.
blown away. Cause I'm thinking to myself, like, what did your Dutch test show? Because, like, how is that computing? Like, how are you going to build health? First of all, most postmenopausal women have low sex hormones across the board. So explain to me how intermittent fasting, which is going to jack your cortisol up because now your body has to break down tissue for fuel because you're not fucking eating. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
how is that going to like translate into sex hormones? Like, I was kind of like, what? I don't even think I knew what to say to that, but I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to be rude and like burst her bubble because I could tell she was kind of riding the high of this, like, oh, I feel like I'm
Oh
thinking,
geez.
this is the placebo effect at work. Like, there is no, I'm doing the math in my head. There is no logical explanation for why this would be so. So I'm just gonna kind of be like, and move on because like this makes no sense, right? But this is just
Yeah.
people. This is what they think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one extreme. If I can be extreme,
Yep.
Am I going to feel better than the other extreme that is
Yep.
eating like shit, not sleeping, and having way too much stress? If you add
Exactly.
one very extreme diet or strategy or whatever, you can't put a crown on that strategy and say that was it. There's no way, right?
Exactly.
There's so many other great ways to do this. And it is so hard. This is like confessions of a health coach, I swear. But I, I think I told you about the time that one of my clients came to me. Oh God, I think I told you this, but it still gets me. The doctor, the naturopathic doctor that took her GI map, that said she had H. pylori and she had an overgrowth of bacteria. She had like high methanoBacterium and like Klebsiella and whatever. So she had an overgrowth happening. And the doctor said, you need to just stop eating for 48 hours and it'll get rid of H. pylori.
Oh God, no.
I
What
was like,
school of thought did this lady come from? That is
I
not.
know. And my first question was, does she see other patients? Like, I am so sorry for all of these other patients that are not getting educated. And I think if I could change one thing, just one thing about the health industry, it would be that the actual, like factual research and applicable strategies would be readily available for everyone that is based on the truth. And
Right.
we didn't have to sift through the bullshit that is all over the freaking internet. And we had you can't monitor people's health practices and you can't monitor the medical field. You can't do that. But what we can do is tune in our bodies enough to say, uh, I feel like I'm not going to feel better if I only drink water for the next 2 days and my bacterial overgrowth is suddenly going to disappear. We are educated humans. We
Oh, for
can
sure.
use what we know and we can learn more about our body. But I wish that we had some kind of just easy way to tell everyone this is what you can do. Here's some easy things that you can do right now.
Oh, for sure, Kelsey. Yeah, if only it was that easy. I think I'd have like a half of my population choosing to fast for 48 hours if that was like the silver bullet for getting rid of H. pylori. My God, like no. I mean, even straight up SIBO, it still takes sometimes 3 weeks on a liquid elemental diet to get rid of that fully, which is a lot longer than what people would think. Are your struggles with bloating, constipation, and diarrhea keeping you home on Friday, Saturday nights, clicking through Netflix because you're dealing with stomach cramping? Or simply need to have a bathroom nearby? Have you stopped being active and joining your friends at the gym because it flares your symptoms and wipes you out for the rest of the day? How about avoiding social gatherings involving food because of extreme anxiety over food reactions or sudden bathroom runs in public? Or because you are too embarrassed to explain your limited diet to others? The isolation, loneliness, and depression that comes with an IBS or IBD struggle is real and often worse than the physical symptoms. I'm here to tell you that you deserve better than just living with this reality and suffering alone. From a person who has lived this nightmare and come out the other end and who has helped many others do the same, there is hope and you are worth the investment. Click the link below to schedule your free 15-minute gut check call. But I think the problem too is we with just all the pharmaceutical advertising and the just being in a first world country, things are so convenient. We have such a high standard of living. We're all so programmed to want these quick fix solutions, whether we know it or not. And I think even in the functional space, that is why these really odd things start to trend. And I mean, I have no idea where this particular naturopath learned that. That doesn't even sound like I've never even come across that. Like, that doesn't even sound like legit and in any way, shape, or form. But like, and I'm not going to pretend I know anything about like urine therapy, but like, I know that's another odd one where people have talked about like drinking your own urine. It's like,
Oh
oh,
my gosh.
yeah, I don't know if you've heard about that, but that is a legit thing that certain natural practitioners, I'm not going to say they're naturopaths, I don't know what their background is, but there are people that have a large following that glom on to these really fad things. And it's like you can cure everything by like drinking your own urine. And like maybe there's some like ancient process wisdom in that. I have no idea. I'm not going to pretend I know, Kelsey, but just right out of the gate, that doesn't hit me as like a sensible idea, I would have to be at my wit's end. And only then would I do a lot of research before I would even consider something like, because it's like, that just sounds too good to be true. If that really worked, then everybody should just pee into a cup and drink it, and we would all get well. And then the second thought I have is like, we're eliminating that though as a like excrement. Like, how is it drinking it? Like, it just doesn't, to me, that doesn't compute mentally. And I think
Right.
for some part of the population, it's that reaching for straws. And it's like, oh my gosh, like give me enough information and I'm hooked. And like, wow, could it be that easy? Maybe I just need to do that and just get over the like grossness of it. And it's just like, okay, if this person can do it, maybe I try. And I mean, are you going to die? Probably not. But like, what are you going to do if you drink your own urine for a month and now you're not better either? Like, now you just did this really weird thing and it's based on what? Like, it isn't
Yeah.
something we learned. And you and I both have multiple, functional certifications. So again, if this was a tried and true thing, you'd be hearing about it repeatedly, right? And you'd be seeing this as like a standard strategy people would be putting clients through. But like, I don't know. It's just odd when this stuff comes up, right?
Yeah. It's how is that even? I mean, your body is choosing to get rid of this and it needs to get rid of it. Why are you putting it back? That is
Yeah.
bizarre to me. And yeah, I can't even. And it just reminds me of, when people say, I've tried everything.
Mm,
And when I hear that, I think that it is probably true because it feels that way, right?
right,
It's all
right,
about perception.
right.
I think that a lot of times what everything is, and again, in air quotes, everything to that
Mhm.
person is everything else outside of just basic nutritional and lifestyle modifications, because
Mhm.
that's not sexy enough to make a change.
Right, right.
An anti-inflammatory diet and sleeping and stress management isn't going to do it for me because it's not sexy enough, because Gwyneth Paltrow didn't do it. She's on the raw vegan diet, so I should be doing that. And, like all of these, we are so drawn to what's shiny. But if we just slow down and say, well, let's talk about what everything means on a functional space and
Mhm.
how it actually changes your body,
Mhm.
that's what we use as everything. And then, not to mention, you can do that, but you also have to do it consistently.
Exactly. And that's the hardest part. And I think another piece to that too is people either don't realize where they're not doing well in these foundations or they're in denial about them. Even basic things like how much sleep they're getting, the quality of the sleep, what they're doing to de-stress every day or work on, those triggers that come up, like not even wanting to admit that deregulated nervous system response that's happening on the constant might actually be tied to their gut symptoms or their food cravings or whatever, right? Like their fatigue levels. Like it's all so interconnected. And and I think because there's this duality, it's so simple, but it's also so hard, Kelsey, because it actually means behavior change. And like I guarantee you line up 50 people, they'd probably all rather pop a pill than actually take a look at their behaviors and work on them. Even though it costs them nothing, it's harder for them to do because I don't know why. I guess because it is for all of us, right? Like it's the psyche. It's the way that we just kind of operate on autopilot and we get in our own way and we have these patterns that we feel work for us without wanting to really take a deep look and question, like, does this really work for us, right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. I think that if everybody slowed down long enough, I think, to just make some behavioral change, and it comes small, right? I
Yeah.
think that we love doing things in extreme. But I love the idea. One of the things we learned in PN that was so important, precision nutrition, was, you really do need to work on something and get it consistent 80% of the time before you try to add something else.
Yeah.
And that's not sexy for people. We want to do everything. We start on Monday, and I have uprooted my entire life. And I went to the grocery store and I meal prepped and I did all these things and I am ready. And this is a 7-day thing, or this is a 30-day thing, or whatever. But it's, what if we just worked on habits, healthy habits over
Mhm.
the course of time, and changed? And, what? I was an overweight kid for my entire life. I mean, just my mom was a single mom. She did the best that she could. We had terrible food around the house because that was the day and age where everything was boxed. We had
Mhm.
hamburger helper without the hamburger. That's what our life
Oh
was,
gosh.
right? So that was normal for us. So I was that perfect person that you mentioned so many times over, that is the example of someone that wasn't getting enough nutrition
Mhm.
and was very overweight. I mean, I was
Yeah.
like 50 pounds overweight. I had
Yeah.
my first child and I decided I had to make a change.
Yep.
And it at first it was the fad diet. It was, well, it's 1200 calories. I'll do the 1200 calorie thing. And I
Yeah.
did that. And I trained for a triathlon and I was a total lunatic for about a year. And
Yeah.
then I realized I don't feel awesome. So then it was starting to become a behavioral thing. And I've never looked back. And that was when I was 24. I'm 42 now. So
Mhm.
I think that it does have to be behavioral change, but if we can give ourselves grace to slow down and say, just pick one thing right now,
Exactly.
just one, drink
Yeah.
water this week
Exactly. Yeah. You can't
and be
set the bar
patient.
too high. Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. It's got to be like one small step at a time is a much more doable strategy than trying to pick five things and go after all five at the same time. I think it's funny
Hmm.
though, Kelsey, because, just listening to that, I actually do think you have your own health story in there, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, it was kind of like having this struggle on some level that goes all the way back to childhood, and maybe it wasn't like a, oh my god, I wake up feeling crappy every day on like a pain level, but yeah, I think all of us have some type of angle where we realize like to really become the people we want to be and feel the best about ourselves, we have to. I mean, I think there's also this inherent desire to want to do the work too and see a lot of like value in learning nutrition and functional medicine. But yeah, I mean, I think we all realize like this isn't just a short-term diet. Like this is a lifestyle that we are opting into, and you don't need all the answers right away. But as you progress on that journey, things you that were challenging the first year get so much easier once you're years down the road. And then you just keep deepening it, right? Like it's a practice, just like anything. And I think that's truly to me like the best part of the work we do is when we can inspire clients to actually make that switch flip where it's like, oh my God, like I actually do enjoy the process of making these changes, feeling better, making healthier choices. Like it's not like a thing they force themselves to do, but something that actually reaffirms itself. And it's like, of course I would do this. Like, why wouldn't I do this? And I'm not looking back because that life just doesn't even compare to where I'm at now and where I want to go. And I can see so much more potential as I go down this path, right?
And that's really where we're holding our badge of honor, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
I love my body and my life enough to like make healthy decisions every day, and it feels foreign to make different decisions that may not benefit you. Doesn't mean that you don't have moderation in fun things,
Mhm.
like, yeah, have dessert for God's sake. Like go out and get a cheeseburger with your kids every once in a while or whatever. Maybe
Yeah.
avoid certain things that you have issues with. But
Yeah.
for the most part, you can still do these things and you can have that really healthy balance. The goal is that you know, we're on a teeter-totter and we have more things in the healthy range for our body than
Mhm.
we do in the unhealthy or the hurtful. I really believe that every decision that we make either heals the body or it hurts the body. I
Yep.
really don't think that there's a lot of neutrality in that. I really think that it's, what am I doing today that's tipping the scale towards healing? And what am I doing today that's tipping the scale toward hurting? And know that it's okay that there are some things that are going to tip on the hurting side because you have more on the healing side.
For
And
sure.
that's fine.
For sure. Exactly. And part of life is things that we might choose to do that are enjoyable might not be the best for us. And like perfect example I can give is I like to have popcorn baked or fried or popped in coconut oil, of course, but I do it with my kids for movie night, right? And it's like a fun indulgence I totally wouldn't do. Now, maybe somebody listening is like, oh my God, that's like a health food for me. I'm not trying to like knock popcorn, but in my world, right, like being on the journey I'm at, my gut has become very compromised. It's very, very sensitive. Like typically I can't do corn of any type, but I will take liberty from time to time because even if my bowels aren't great the next day, it's a conscious choice I make to just have that indulgence. And so is it the end of the world? Are you going to die? No. But like, yeah, I mean, it's like you're saying, Kelsey, like you might be dairy sensitive, but you don't go anaphylactic. But every so often, you might have a good quality ice cream with your kids, like at the beach or something, right? Like, and that's okay. Like, we definitely don't come from the sphere of like, you have to be ultra strict and you can only do this. And if you fall off, never, ever, ever. But it's just knowing that and then being able to say, like, well, of course, I'm not feeling as great because I had this, but that's okay. Like, it was worth it. And now I'm kind of back on my normal and this is fine too, right? Like that's a good I think balanced place to operate in the world from, in my perspective.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And that's probably one of the most difficult things we do as coaches and as individuals who are basically coaching ourselves is what does that every day look like?
Mhm.
And making yourself vulnerable as well to be able to share that with your community, share that with your clients too. Like, yeah, I had an ice cream cone with my kids or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and that's okay because in my journey at my space right now in my life, I can do that and I can monitor myself really well and know that if there is some kind of response that happens, I know what to do. But like you
Exactly.
said, it's a conscious choice and that's totally okay. My goal with people, and I'm sure this is the same with you, is that eventually we can get people to understand what everyday life looks like for them. And there's so much joy in it. And it is no longer restrictive. And it is no longer feeling like, there needs to be rebellion for you to indulge in something. It is just everyday life and you are
Yep.
happy with it.
Exactly. There's no point in doing, say, a paleo diet if it feels like chore every single day you do it, right? Like this is what we want. We want people to choose to sort of stick with a diet, if we want to call it like a way of eating, a way of choosing foods that feels natural and feels like it gives them liberty and allowance, but still removes the things that they know are problematic and inflammatory, right? Like that's how we operate, I think, as practitioners, is we kind of settle into this rhythm of I know the things I have to avoid, and I'm totally okay with that because I've got a ton of choices within this range of foods that I know I handle really well, right? And that is kind of what we're talking about. And then if every now and again you choose to eat a food that falls outside of that and you know it's going to give you trouble, so be it, make it consciously, and then know that that's just a here and there type of thing that isn't going to necessarily make or break your, what do we call it, the 80-20 rule, like that core sort of philosophy that you enjoy living by, because you know that that's what gives you the health results you're looking for and also gives you the ability to fall off the wagon every so often without the whole world falling apart, right, that one time. So
Yeah, yeah. And it is different with the journeys, right? So if someone's listening to this and it's like, well, I'm on an elimination diet and I'm Kelsey's client or I'm Courtney's client and I'm on an elimination diet right now, so I can go and have, gluten and dairy tonight, right? No big deal. The answer is no.
yeah.
No, 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 you cannot. If we are right smack in the healing protocol, and we are working, we've looked at labs and there's like, okay, this is X, Y, and Z, and this is part of the healing protocol.
Yes,
Yes, we do have to be a little bit more adherent and targeted. But the
exactly.
goal is that that's not how you live your life forever. Let's
E-
just do the work one time. Let's
yeah.
learn more about our bodies, and then let's find joy for the rest of our life in optimal health.
Yes, amen, sister. I love that. That's great. I want you to just share a little bit about like your practice and how people can find you in case they're interested in reaching out and connecting with you.
Yes. So I own the Holistic Health Lab, and you can find me online, theholistichealthlab.com. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty decent on Instagram, although it is hard for me to be consistent, if I'm being totally honest. But my handle is at Health with Kelsey. Send me a message. I would love it. It says, "Hey, I hung out with you and Courtney, and I loved it," or "Here's
Yeah.
my feedback," or whatever. But that's really where my two big ones are is online on the website and then of course on Instagram. So
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.